I'm Tim Ventura, and we're joined today by Dr. Jack Sarfatti, a theoretical physicist specializing in advanced propulsion research. Dr. Sarfatti has a Ph.D. in physics from the University of California, taught physics at San Diego State University, worked with David Bohm at the University of London's Birkbeck College, and with Abdus Salam at the International Center for Theoretical Physics in Trieste, Italy. Jack was the basis, the memorable time-traveling Dr. Emmett Brown in the Back to the Future trilogy, and the author of Supercosmos, Destiny Matrix, Space, Time and Beyond 2, and the co-author with Fred Alan Wolf and Bob Toben of Space, Time and Beyond, toward an explanation of the unexplainable. Today, we're discussing Jack's experiences at Cafe Trieste, the Bohemians and the Beatnicks, Andy Warhol, Timothy Leary, and relativistic warp drive propulsion physics. One of the legendary parts of your history is Cafe Trieste, where Jack Kerouac and the Beats hung out. You went there almost daily for years, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not only were you one of the hippies who saved physics, you were also connected to the Beats. And, I've looked at Cafe Trieste online. I mean, there are pictures of all of the famous people there, and you knew some of them, right?
Yes. Well, actually, now there is another book called Bohemia. Let me see. I'm trying to get this camera done right. Bohemia by Herbert Gold. And it's the history of the whole Bohemian movement, starting from, I guess, in Czechoslovakia or Germany, where the original Bohemia was. I guess it's Czechoslovakia. Paris, and then Greenwich Village, San Francisco. And I'm in the book. Actually, I'm in the book because Herb Gold, about the Cafe Trieste, and Herbert Gold was actually one of my Cornell professors back in the late 1950s. Herb was a protege of Vladimir Nabokov, and Nabokov was a professor of literature at Cornell, back in the 50s when I was an undergraduate.
Okay.
And when Nabokov went off to Montreux, Switzerland, to write the screenplay, I think, for Lolita, his protege, Herb Gold, was his substitute. So I took a course in European literature with Herb Gold. This is back like 1958, which is how I met him. Now, Herb himself, he's about 15 years older than me, and he was a Russian translator in the Army intelligence in World War II. And then right after, the late 40s, he didn't go back to the States. He stayed in Paris, with Sartre and Denis Nin and, everybody, the whole movement there. So it's a very interesting book. But what's funny about the book is that he writes about my physics theory of how the future creates the past.
Well, and it's one of the things that's interesting to me is not only are you a physicist, right, but you have a connection to this intellectual community, and these are elite people. I mean, these are Jack Kerouac, right? That's right there.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's not only like last time we spoke, I was telling you about how I met Arthur Kessler, Dr. Sanoon, and Arthur C. Clarke in connection with the Uri Geller tests at the University of London with David Bohm and all those people. But also I was involved with this French Kabbalist in Paris. This is also around 1973, 74, Carlos Suarez, who was part of that whole Paris thing too, close friend of Lawrence Durrell. In fact, Carlos was the inspiration in the Lawrence Durrell's Alexandria Quartet, which is also about British intelligence, World War II, sort of cloak and dagger stuff. Carlos Suarez was the inspiration for the character Balthazar. Okay, and so it's all very connected. Also, Suarez was also a close friend. Actually, he was a roommate of Henry Miller back in the 20s. Henry Miller,
Yeah, yeah.
And he also knew Krishnamurti, and he met David Bohm. So yeah, and all right, now there's a rumor. Okay, Henry Miller wrote a little paperback, and I lost it. I wish I could find it. It's very old, like 60 years ago, called 100 Short Essays by Henry Miller. And Miller talks about his time with Carlos Suarez. And Henry Miller says that, basically says Suarez was the secret head of something like this French alchemical society, the Prieuré de Zion, which goes back to the Knights Templar and this whole Dan Brown stuff with Jesus Christ, and as that whole stuff with Dan Brown, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, sort of stuff. This is pretty crazy, but so I'm with Carlos at the time. I was with Fred Alan Wolf. We were writing Space, Time, and Beyond in Paris.
Okay.
This is like the end of 1973. Remember, this is 20 years after my phone call with the computer from the future saying I'm going to meet everybody, right? So with Carlos Suarez, and Carlos had this, he lived right by the Champ de Mars, which is near the Eiffel Tower. And in fact, it was a beautiful place. If you're walking from the Seine, from the River Seine, on the Champ de Mars toward the Eiffel Tower, on the left-hand side, the first block, there's this tall building, and Carlos had the penthouse in this, in this kind of Art Deco apartment building. And I used to go up there. Fred Alan Wolf and Bob Toben and I were writing the book Space, Time, Beyond. We're in Paris, and we used to go up to Carlos's place. He was about 84 years old at that time, old guy, and he was also a painter. He was kind of a Picasso type personality painter, and he was also a poet. They used some of his poetry in the French textbooks. Even though he was born in Alexandria, Egypt, a Sephardic Jew like I am, So, and in any case, so at one point, he's trying to teach us his mystical Kabbalah. Okay, he wrote a book called The Cipher of Genesis. There's a book in which he mentions Fred Alan Wolf and me, the physicists, and it's our mission to actually decode the secret code in the Old Testament Genesis in the Bible, in the Old Testament. Because according to Carlos, get this is really getting interesting. According to Carlos, Genesis in the Old Testament is a cipher, and in there's a physics code. Okay.
Okay.
And then at one point, Carlos grabs me. He kind of looked like Yoda in Star Wars. He grabs me by the shoulders and he says, "Jack, you are heir to the tradition, but you will not come into your power until you're with the woman and the child." Well, the woman and the child, that goes to Mary Magdalene, and Jesus Christ, right? That's what he's, all that mystical stuff, all right? But some things he said, part of your mission is to smash the wall of light. Smash the wall of light. Well, what's the wall of light? It's a light cone, special relativity, light cone. Smashing it, but that's faster than light, right?
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, this is Carlos Suarez, 1973, 74. He's a Jewish Kabbalist and a poet, and he's part of the whole beat Bohemian tradition that you're talking. You see how it's all interconnected.
Yeah, it is. It's an intellectual community, and that's one of the things that's so exciting about it. You're part of it. It's a really rich intellectual tradition.
Yeah, it's a rich thing, and it's a web of Jungian synchronicity, and it's very complex. Now, there's one of the beat poets was Gregory Corso, okay, who I knew very well in San Francisco. In fact, Gregory would part-time roommate. He would crash at my Bohemian pad. When I was there with Suki Sedgwick, was a girlfriend of mine in the 80s. She was Edie Sedgwick's baby sister. That's a whole Andy Warhol, the whole thing there. And
Oh, that's right, because you knew Andy Warhol.
well, no, I didn't know Andy Warhol. I met him briefly but I knew.
Oh, okay, okay.
You know, Edie Sedgwick's baby sister was my girlfriend for many years, on and off the 1980s, and I met Warhol briefly, although Suki didn't like him. But what was I trying to get to? Oh yeah, but yeah. So Gregory Corso, the beat poet, friend of Kerouac and Ferlinghetti, you know, the whole thing, was Suki and Edie Sedgwick's brother, Bobby Sedgwick, roommate at Harvard. So there are all these, you know, interconnections. But in any case, Gregory wrote a poem based on my Fast and Light Back from the Future physics.
Oh,
It's all
okay.
that, okay, and I can't remember. It's about the god, not you know, this god. One of the gods comes down and he goes fast and light. In any case, it's this poem that's based upon. So you know, so it's all very interconnected. I mean, the poetry, the mystical stuff, the secret societies. Yeah, that's the other thing that I was also contacted. You know, I got back to San Francisco. Werner Erhard, you know, is funding us at Esalen, along with the military, along with George Koopman, the Army Intelligence, and you know, that's where Timothy Leary becomes part of our group. Timothy Leary's let out of prison. Where does Timothy Leary go? He joins Jack Sarfatti's physics consciousness research group.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
he was really interesting, because then in the 80s, and Andy Warhol as well, they got into the whole computers the new drug, right? Andy Warhol said computers are the new art. He actually
Yeah.
was one of the first people doing CGI art. Timothy Leary said computers are the new drug, and he actually did some really groundbreaking work in terms of you know, computing and just some of the early philosophy behind it, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure. Certainly. And what's really weird is that in one of his books, Leary says also that I'm the guy who's going to complete the Smile mission.
No, I didn't know that he was. I didn't know that you were friends with him, though.
Oh,
That's
no,
amazing.
he was part of my. He was part of the oh yeah, part of the group for a while. He was let out of prison.
Oh, okay.
Okay, by Nixon, I guess. So no, Nixon was already gone by then. But he was let out of prison, and his case officer was George Koopman, who was the guy who was funding me, the Army intelligence guy. Okay.
Okay.
And so Koopman brought him to Big Sur to Esalen. You know, that's how I first. Oh, actually, wait a minute. Now, I forgot. I did meet Tim Leary very briefly in 1960 or so, when I was at Brandeis, and Aldous Huxley came. The Doors of Perception, the Doors, you know, the movie The Doors of Perception. Aldous Huxley gave his famous lecture at MIT, which I was there, you know, with Leary and all these guys. And at that point, there was a communication between me and Leary. I was a graduate student in physics at Brandeis, a National Defense Fellow. And Leary wanted me to take part in the CIA experiments on taking LSD.
And back then, if I remember right,
1960.
he was
But I
really
didn't do it.
he was
I
really
didn't.
straight laced, right? I
Oh,
mean,
he was.
he was
Oh,
the
yes.
shirt and tie back then.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That was very straight laced. Leary was a. I mean, he was. Leary was born in West Point, like 1918 or so. Was it no after the war? Yeah, it was after World War One. But General MacArthur was the superintendent of West Point, and Leary's father was an army dentist and at West Point. And Leary told me that he was the bastard son of General MacArthur, who had an affair with his mother, who was married to his biological, you know, his legal father is not his real father, it's General MacArthur. That's what he told me.
Okay, well, it could be, right?
It could be.
So he asked you to take LSD in the to
In
participate in the.
1960, yeah, because I met him with Aldous Huxley and all, but I didn't do it. I was very straight, you know, and I was mad. Yeah, I didn't do it.
Yeah,
But
and then by the end of the decade, he was taking his own medicine. So
yeah, yeah. Well, that's yes. I mean, but he wasn't. He was working for the CIA. In fact, he told me Frank Barron. Frank Barron was a professor at UC Santa Cruz, and it was Frank Barron who was part of the CIA. It was this is all MK Ultra. Frank Barron got him to take it. Got him into the project, and then Leary himself took it. Like John Lilly. I also knew John Lilly. So yeah. So this is all tightly knit on many, many levels. The beats, uh, you know, uh, well, the Bohemians, the whole, well, as you were saying, okay, I think, yeah, I talk about some of this in my book, Destiny Matrix, which I'm
okay.
actually redoing in London here with an editor. We're going to do an updated version of it, and a lot of this weird stuff. And this is big. This is very big.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing this with me because I think most people aren't aware of this, right?
No.
And I'd had people who asked about your physics, and your physics is impeccable. I have never met anyone who has seriously questioned your physics,
Well, I don't
But
know. There's a lot of getting that.
I know that there are critics, but even with the critics, they seem to come around after a while. But the part that gets me is you have this incredible history from some of the most monumental moments in the 20th
Yeah,
century, right?
yeah,
So
absolutely true, absolutely true. Yeah, yes, yeah. I'm reminded you. Oh well, let's get on to the. Yeah, we could spend the whole time
yeah, well,
talking.
you
This is
wanted to
high stranges. This is the high stranges stuff, right? Skinwalker Ranch, Jacques Vallée, Eric Davis, the paranormal component to what's going on. What's the big picture? The big picture is that I am a messenger. I'm a messenger of advanced intelligence. Tim Leary talks space migration, intelligence increase, life extension. Okay. We're not alone in the universe. I'm not the only one saying this. We have Jim Semivan, CIA, and all these, even Chris Mellon, they're all saying we're not alone in the universe. What's happening with the US Navy close encounters, these things, this is an advanced intelligence. And I claim from the physics, the elementary application of general relativity, these are time travelers.
Yeah.
Okay? So this is very big. These people, they can control space and time, they control, which is the gravitational field. They have very powerful weapons if they want to use them. They could destroy us if they wanted to. and there are many of these groups out there. Some of them are friendly, others maybe not so friendly. And here we are on the brink of destroying ourselves. So we're at a very significant point now in history. Sort of like what's that guy? What's the Millennium? Kurzweil. What's Kurzweil?
Yeah, right. Well, yeah. So
Singularity.
Ray Kurzweil, and I think so. One of the maybe not exactly, but there's this idea of the singularity, right? And maybe this is what you're talking about, where
Yeah.
artificial intelligence wakes up, and I believe they put that Kurzweil originally predicted that it would be before 2045, if I remember right.
Well, it's
And
happening pretty much now. Okay, now there's the other thing. Artificial intelligence. It's going to be conscious artificial intelligence.
yeah, and that was what he'd said. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And that's what, again, I'm repeating, but for some of you may not have heard the previous lectures. Central Intelligence Agency basically drafted me, recruited me back 50 years ago, early 70s, to work on two problems. What is consciousness in terms of physics, and how does flying sources work, right? The two problems, the two sides of the same coin, as we already saw in Louis Elizondo's and Al Puthoff's two slides. One is the 5 observables, that's the UFO propulsion, gravity stuff. And the other is slide 9, about control, the psychic war, the mind manipulation at a distance, that whole thing. And now I'm claiming, I and a few others, I have solved those two problems that the Central Intelligence Agency asked me to work on. I'm claiming mission accomplished. The problems are solved, and by that I mean conceptually we understand in terms of the basic established laws of physics how both these things work, how they're connected with each other. That doesn't mean I know how to go out and build a working flying saucer.
Yeah, it's a big project. It's a big
That's a big project, or any, it's any more than when Einstein in 1916 or so, when he published general relativity, doesn't mean that he could compute the gravity waves from colliding black holes. That takes or when he did E equals mc squared, he couldn't build a nuclear reactor, make an atom bomb, things like those are big projects. So people have to distinguish what theoretical physicists do. We sort of make the basic map. We get the basic understanding of the phenomenon. So once you have the basic understanding, the correct idea, then you can apply that to engineering. That's a major, massive project. Okay.
Well, and one of the things that excited me was, and you showed this in a graph a while ago, you were talking about tipping the light cone. And
Yes.
I thought that was really exciting because, that goes towards this idea of time travel, right? And
yes,
and I might be...
that goes, yeah. And for some reason, apparently a lot of the guys in the field are not aware of this. Now, it's a picture due to Roger Penrose, where Roger Penrose, by the way, Roger Penrose comes from a family of very intelligent, family, and they include artists. And Roger himself is a pretty good artist. I mean, he draws these beautiful, like cartoon-like pictures of his theory. But one of the things that Roger does, he explains the curvature of space-time, which is Einstein's notion of gravity, as the tilting of these light cones. Feel the light cones, okay? And once you understand that what warp drive is, it's the control of, so to speak, of the orientation of the light cones against the Minkowski space-time fabric. And once you understand that, it's pretty easy to see how time travel to the past works. Also, I'm beginning to think, I'm not sure, I could be mistaken here, a lot of the published literature on the warp drive metrics, including the Alcubierre, all that work that's being done, they're making a fundamental mistake. Because they don't have this light cone. They're not thinking what they're doing. The mathematical model, the mapping, what's called the metric, the map, what they have, it's correct for an observer very far away from the warp bubble itself.
Oh,
it doesn't
okay.
properly describe what's happening at the warp bubble. And you can kind of see this because, like the Alcubierre metric, when you look at it, it has a V in it. V is the velocity, the apparent velocity of the star of the flying saucer, of the Tic Tac, whatever you want, and that velocity can be faster than light. It seems, it's not really, but so, but that velocity, that's what the distant observer sees. The guy inside, the guy in the ship, he doesn't see any velocity. He's at rest. He's inside the thing. This is a new thing. This is a fairly new little, what's called back of the envelope, very rough calculation. What happened is there's a guy, one of the group is a guy named Alan Parker.
Okay.
He's a retired naval officer, lieutenant commander, Alan Parker, and he's kind of and he was asking me some questions about how does the Tic Tacs or the flying saucers, how do they cancel the Earth's gravity? And so I was trying to answer it. Then I got this. This is sort of new. Here is a little model. This is the Tic Tac, right? This is what the Tic Tac is. This is the fuselage, the Tic Tac shaped fuselage. But what it is, it's like a double hull. There's the inner surface and there's the outer surface. Okay, and just think of it. It's like the plates of a capacitor. So the outer surface of the Tic Tac fuselage is like a metal conductor, a good metallic conductor. The inner surface is also a metallic conductor, but inside you have this artificial metamaterial dielectric. It's just like putting dielectric between the plates of a capacitor. Okay,
Yeah.
All right. And all you have to do in the simplest case is just apply, you have like an AC voltage generator. So you just charge up the plates, like a plus charge on the inner plate and a minus charge on the outer plate. Okay. And then what that does is it generates an effective gravity field inside the metamaterial. Okay, effective gravity field, and this is the expression for the gravity field. All right, where capital G is Newton's. Well, I won't go into what all these things mean, but basically, capital A is the surface area of the fuselage.
Okay.
The surface area. Okay, and little d is simply the separation, the thickness of the fuselage, of the outer skin. Okay, it's just the thickness of the fuselage, and then there's the Sarfatti field that amplifies everything. Okay, but this is what it is. This is the expression for the internal. What actually it's what it is. It's the Newtonian gravity potential energy per unit test mass that's generated by the voltage difference. Okay. And divided by c squared. So it turns out that this is just a pure dimensionless number. All right, now, all right, let me go on. Okay, now what happens is that this expression here is the Earth's gravitational field at the surface of the Earth. That's the Earth's the gravitational potential. And what happens is inside the in this green area, inside the metamaterial, the two terms have to cancel each other. That's canceling the Earth's gravity. They have to cancel each other. And that'll just make what's like a flat space-time inside there. And the condition for them, it's actually pretty simple. So this is the condition for them to now. So it turns out, but what's very interesting, this is very rough, back, I did this like in 20 minutes, okay? And there could be some mistakes, but basically what happens is, and this surprised me, the area of the fuselage, the external area, like the cross section, you're doing a radar thing, the area doesn't matter. The area cancels out of the calculation. And the separation between the plates or the thickness of the fuselage, that also cancel out. And all that matters is the square of the voltage, the square of the applied voltage. And of course, we have to have, the big thing is this S thing, which amplifies what's called this resonance factor. This resonance factor, which when you pump the thing, when the frequency of the applied voltage hits a resonance, this S thing shoots up very strong value, and also you can control the sign of it. You see, because this cosine term, when the cosine goes negative, then that's like anti-gravity cancels the attractive gravity.
Okay.
So you have this cosine term. You also have this term here. By the way, this thing here, I should have put a W. I'm missing a W. This thing here, may involve 0-point energy. I forgot. It should be a W. I'm missing a term. I just wrote it too quickly. But this term here may get big. It's an additional term that can get big if you're doing like the Casimir 0-point energy. This whole Casimir, the stuff that put off and other guys talk about. It may come in here, in addition to this other stuff. So, any case, very interesting. But I actually put in the numbers. When you put in the numbers, in order to cancel the Earth's gravity, the square of the voltage times the size of the peak in the Sarfatti field, so to speak, the peak, that has to equal 10 to the 29 in order to cancel the Earth's gravity at the surface of the Earth. 10 to the 29. That appears to be a big number. But it turns out this S can be very big, and the voltage itself, you might even have like 1,000,000 volts. The dielectrics, the dielectrics may not break. You might have 1,000,000 volts, say, across the plate, and that gives a factor of 10 to the 12. So then so you have 10 to the 14. I mean, these numbers are not that bad. And this is very rough. I just did this a little while ago, like yesterday. But the point is, it's suggestive. I'm just saying it's suggestive because we're seeing these things flying around. Okay, so with the Navy, that's what we're seeing. That it's a fact that these things are operational. We just don't; they're not ours.
And so within relativity theory, this is a method.
This is all Einstein. This is all classic. This is all classical Einstein relativity, general relativity, and classical Maxwell theory. And this is nothing very sophisticated.
Yeah.
And classical physics. There isn't even much quantum mechanics here.
Yeah, you're controlling the geodesic. You're tipping the light cone. That gives you gravity modification and some control over time. It sounds like.
Yes. So, but the thing is this: what this indicates is that the technology to do this, if you have the right metamaterial, because that's what's difficult. But if somehow people stumbled on something, But the point is, the technology is not that sophisticated in principle. Maybe even the Nazis did it. There's also the Nazi, but who the hell knows? But except for this, getting the resonance right, soon after Einstein, in the 1920s, 1930s, they could have actually discovered this. I used to think they couldn't. But the technology is not that, it's not that sophisticated. All this stuff that, that Nick Cook wrote the book.
That's right. The Hunt for Zero Point. Yeah.
See, that the technology here is not that different what Nick was exploring. So I don't know now. I used to think it was not possible, but now I'm not so sure.
Well, Jack, why don't we close for today then? Let me thank you so much for your time. Although for me, one of the most exciting things is to capture your experiences, again, going back to Cafe Trieste and the Bohemians, that rich, diverse intellectual history.
Yeah, well, also that's where I met Francis Ford Coppola. Also, which led to the movies, which I got Jacques Vallée involved in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, all these movies, and Back from the Future, because I'm hanging out with all the Coppola's Rat Pack, all these movie guys, right? I was part of that whole thing.
Oh, that's right. So that would be the Doc Emmett Brown.
Yes,
right?
Yes, that's how it happened, because of Cafe Trieste. Well, actually, I was at Cafe Trieste with Francis Coppola, but I first met Francis because of Werner Erhard, because I met Francis's wife, Ellie Coppola, at an S training in 1976 when I was there with Buzz Aldrin, sitting next to Buzz Aldrin at this
thing. Again, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah,
so
it is pretty amazing. I'm sort of like Zelig, the Woody Allen movie Zelig. All right, so that's it. All right, so let's.
Wonderful, Jack. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.